I'm fired up and I'm ready to go. I'm fired up and I'm ready to go. I'm fired up and I'm ready to go. This is the Billionaire Brown experience. Let's go.
Yeah.
Was there ever a point, we know you wanted to do that, but was there ever a point where you did give up in that fight?
There was almost a point. And this is what happened. I was going through I had already gotten divorced. It was either I was still separated on my way to the divorce or I had gotten divorced. Anyway, I was hurting. It was a real tough time for both of us, for all of us. And I was hurting, and I went to my dad. By this time, I've had a relationship with my dad for 15 years or whatever. And I went to him. I said, I think I'm moving to North Carolina. My siblings live in North Carolina. 3 of my siblings. I go down there every year. I keep a relationship with them.
Where about in North Carolina?
Godwin.
Okay, I'm in Raleigh. All right, go ahead.
Okay. I saw that too, and I do go to Raleigh sometimes to take my kids. When I go down there, we go to the museums over there.
We can play some ping pong, man.
I'm down there every summer. So I was like, hey, I was like, I'm hurting. I'm thinking about going down to North Carolina. I'm going to move down there for a little bit and just kind of get myself together and clear my head. And he was like, yeah, do that. You have to take care of yourself. And it was at that moment when he said that, something came over me. Things got clearer. He wasn't there. And I thought, I can't leave my girls. I got to stick this out. I got to feel this pain. I got to stick this out because my girls need me. I'm actually getting choked up now, just like reliving it in my head. But yeah, I had to stick it out. I had to go through it. I had to feel the pain and be here for my girls. And at that time, it was on a real limited basis.
So what was the first thing that you did to make this step? Because there was tension between you and their mother, right? There was tension. It wasn't easy, you just said.
No, it wasn't easy at all.
So you made that decision. You know what? I'm not going. I got to do this. Like what, if you remember, what was like the very first thing that you did?
Well, I remember everything really clear. What happened was, my ex-wife, Anna, she had met someone. She told me she met someone, and she was moving. She was moving to Philly. And I thought, that's going to, it's only a few miles away, but that bridge is going to create a wedge between me and my kids. That's going to, that bridge is going to create something that isn't going to go well for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided I was going to file for joint custody. Because at that time, she had full custody. And I did that because I didn't want to disrupt my girls' lives. So I was like, look, you just take full custody. They can continue to live their lives. But with the understanding that I would have access to my girls. Like, not just show up like, all right, I'm taking the girls, but have complete access to my girls. And it started to slip away. So anyhow, she was moving to Philly. And so I told her, I texted her one night, I said, probably wasn't the best way to go. Text can be misread sometimes, but I said, look, I'm going to file for joint custody. And I just wanted to let you know. She got freaked out. She came to my apartment with the cops and took the kids. And there wasn't anything I could do about it. 11 o'clock at night, out of bed, kids driving down the street in the car, and there was nothing I could do, which kind of solidified the fact that I had no power when it came to my kids' lives. So, I got a lawyer, and we sent her a letter, and it basically, stated that she had made a unilateral move, which wasn't in the best interest of the kids. And if she didn't respond to the letter to come in and try to mediate this, then we would have to go to court.
Okay, so I want to get back to this drugs thing. I have a few more questions with that.
Yeah,
but now that we're right here, I do want to ask you if you could look back, because there's so many fathers that are in your at that spot where you just had to make that decision. Looking back through this turbulence, through this, you guys weren't communicating. You weren't on the same. You may have been on the same page.
Yeah.
But you weren't in the same page in the same book. Right, you was in a magazine on page 10, and she was on page 10 in a book, right?
Yeah, I got it.
What could you have done differently to make the transition what it was once you had to come back and humble yourself and recreate a plan? What could you have done differently? You guys said it doesn't work between you guys, both of you. What could you have done differently that you didn't do the first time around?
As far as the marriage is concerned?
No, well, as far as I guess co-parenting part.
Oh, okay, co-parenting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could have talked to her more. Could have had a more open dialogue, and we didn't. I think we just kind of both was in our pain, and we weren't communicating real well. And what happened was we had sort of a buffer between us. I have an uncle who helped him and his wife didn't have kids, and they kind of took care of my little one. My little one didn't go to preschool or anything like that. They kind of took care of them, and they became really attached to them, or to my little one. And he was like the buffer between us. So we were kind of using him for things going back and forth, and we were kind of dropping the kids off. I would drop the kids off. That's where I would take my kids. I would take my kids to my uncle's house, and then Anna would come later and pick them up.
And how did he become the buffer?
I kind of asked him to because my daughters were always over there already.
You kind of asked him to, or you did ask him to?
I did ask him.
Okay. How did that happen? Because I think that's big too.
Yeah.
Basically, when you're saying a buffer, you mean like a middle person.
Yes, like a mediator.
Okay,
yeah.
Excellent.
So that I wouldn't always have to have contact with Anna because I was hurting. So some of this was my fault, because I was hurting and I didn't want to have contact. She may have been feeling the same way as well. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure she was. She was hurting as well. It was, we got divorced and we were married for 9 years. So I asked him. I said, "Hey, look, I really want this to kind of work with the kids. Would it be okay if you be a drop-off point? I'll come here. Anna can drop the kids off here. I'll come here and pick them up, and vice versa. I'll drop them off here, and she can come pick them up." Because he had a good relationship with Anna as well.
Nice. And he was very neutral.
No, he wasn't.
Oh, he was. He was
not very neutral. This came out a little later that he really wasn't. He was more on the side of Anna than on the side of me. Not that you have to take sides, but he more leaned towards Anna.
Why? Do you know why?
I just think they had formed a pretty good relationship. I had become kind of reclusive. I had suffered from some depression and I'd have these roller coasters of emotion during the marriage. I was probably some of it that kind of, brought it down. Definitely some of it that brought it down. And they had just formed a good relationship. And I think that they also took the role of, she's from another country. And she's been here since she was a child, but not her main family is back in Nicaragua. I think they kind of took almost like this parenting role to her and saw her as a daughter. And so that's why at least my uncle, kind of went in that direction. And one of the low points in that was, again, me and Anna, we weren't communicating real well. We were using my uncle as a buffer. I went to Walmart. I was going to Walmart for something. And I saw a car pull in the parking lot, and it looked like my uncle's car. And I stopped, I didn't get out of the car. I checked it. I was just seeing if it was him. Well, it was him. And he had my kids with him. And I was getting ready to leave. My kids were over there, and I was getting ready to go back home.
Without them seeing you?
Without them seeing me.
Okay.
And I can't explain why, except that I was hurt. That's why. I was hurt because me and my uncle only lived 2 miles away. And at that moment, I couldn't understand why Anna didn't call me to watch my kids. Why did she call me and say, "Hey, I'm doing something, or I got to go here," or whatever it was. Can you take care of your kids? Because of course I would have said yes. But instead, she sent them to my uncle. And that was a real low point for me. And this was before, we had the 50-50 and all that.
Was it them when in the parking lot? Was it really them?
Oh, yes, because I didn't leave. I went into the Walmart and caught up with them and said hi to my kids, but had no power as far as the law was concerned to take my kids.
So you lived 2 miles from your uncle?
Probably about 2 miles, yeah.
Okay.
I lived in Oakland. He lived in, if you're familiar with the area, I lived in Oakland. He lived in Woodland.
Okay. And
we share a zip code, you know?
That's crazy, man. How far did you live from Anna?
Anna, at that time, I believe we were living in Voorhees. I don't know if at that point she still lived in Voorhees or she had already made the move to Philly. I'm not quite sure.
Okay, so either way, I mean, it's what, less
6,
than
7,
10
8
miles?
Yeah.
Okay, so damn, the fact that you're just being very transparent, I know for a fact that you're going to inspire a lot of men to actually just do whatever is necessary. You're less than 10 miles.
Yeah.
There's a lot of this going on. I'm curious to know, before we get into this drugs thing, your story is so, it's very powerful. So I'm inclined to ask questions. So I want to know, like, have you ever met anyone who is going through something very similar?
What I've met, I haven't met anyone. I really haven't met anyone that has the same arrangement as I have. I've heard that some other guy, fathers have a 50-50 and stuff like that. But most of the guys, I'm a carpenter. I'm in the carpenters union. That's neither here nor there, but I just thought I'd put that out there. And I run into a lot of guys, and I talk to a lot of guys that they're on these stipulated schedules, and they're paying a boatload of child support. And I know child support has its place. It certainly does.
Sure. But
in a lot of instances, what I've seen, my personal observation, and with talking with other carpenters, is that they're paying way too much money and seeing their kids way too little. It's almost as if they're paying for the opportunity to see their kids, but they're not seeing them enough. But they better be thankful that they get to see their kids in the amount of time they do. It seems like it definitely appears to be more about the money they can provide than the relationship they can provide. And one of my critiques of this is, if you're a father and you want to remain a crucial part of your children's lives, yet you've been stipulated to almost like a weekend dad. How can you effectively discipline your children? And I know there's dads out there that's got to, and this is why I want to do this podcast, because I know there are dads and fathers that are in that predicament and they make it work, and I want to talk to them as well, because not everyone is going to have the arrangement I have. But for me, it was like, well, how can I effectively discipline my children and be that crucial parent in their life when I don't want to disrupt anything on the weekend? I just want to have fun with them. I just want to love them. I don't want to have to send them to their room on a Saturday when all I have is Saturday. So it made it difficult, and I believe it makes it difficult for other fathers.
Wow.
So
that's really powerful. And I like, because we might as well, you just referenced it. So on your podcast, there will be other guests, and there will be other dads and things of that nature with different or sometimes similarity stories as you. What type of people, like what type of fathers, what type of dads, what type of situations would you like for people to start contacting you about as far as potential guests on the show?
Maybe initially, because I wasn't communicating in the beginning because I was hurting. And I know that, and now I recognize that maybe Anna wasn't communicating real well because she was hurting. And if somehow we can recognize that in one another, you got two people hurting and they both feel as though they're the cause of the hurt, it's real hard to communicate in that state. So that's sort of like initially the message I want to get out is that it starts with communication. It starts with, you're going through the pain. You got to feel the pain, but reaching out,
But what type of fathers and what type of dads do you want to actually have on as guests? Sounds like you want to hear some other people's stories that are also going through the same thing as you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, obviously because I'm a divorced dad, that's really who I want. I want divorced dads with children. So that it can be put out there, because there's a wide range of arrangements, and we all have our own issues in raising our children, and they vary and they're the same, and some are on these stipulated schedules, and I just want to get fathers talking about it. I want it heard. I want people to hear the importance of time with the kids. That this arrangement, that when you walk into a courtroom and they put this stipulated arrangement on, we don't get a second shot at this. We don't get a second shot at raising our kids. We get one shot, and they're not children forever. They become adults and they become their own people. So the time while they're children, and that relationship that you're forming with them, and the time you have with them, and I'm all about time. I'm not about buying things. I mean, I buy my kids stuff, but I won't work overtime to buy them something if I'm going to miss time with them.
Why don't they? I always wondered that. Like, why isn't time included? Like, you know how like with child support, if you don't pay it, you could potentially go to jail. You lose your license.
Seriously,
I wonder why they don't do that with time.
That's kind of what I had mentioned earlier. It seems to be what's more important is that monetary value.
Yeah.
That is placed on supporting the kids. But yes, time, they give you a little time, but time isn't the main point, because if it was, then the court would want you to spend more time with your children. Mm-hmm. That would be more important.
Do you think anything would be different in your story if you had boys instead of girls?
I don't know, but I love having the girls.
Okay.
I do like having the girls. Because
I'm interested in that fork in the road where you had to make the decision of, the tension between you and Anna and you doing what's right for your kids.
Yeah. I can't really speak to the other part of it because I don't have boys, but I think because I have girls and I'm a father, maybe that did push me a little harder.
Because you teaching them, you taught them a fight. Like, if they don't know anything about you as a father, they know that you fought to be in their lives. And if they don't know it now, they're going to know it. And once they do know it, that's going to make them feel like on cloud, like whatever. Because you fought. Where many gave up the fight, you actually fought and proceeded until you won the victory.
Yeah.
And that's got to play a major part in their psyche of respect of a man and of their father.
I hope so, because they're my world, and I don't even look at it really like it was definitely a victory for me as a dad, but I wasn't trying to take anything or win anything from Anna. What I just wanted to still be a dad in a large capacity, not a weekend capacity, not a small portion. I still wanted to be an intricate part of their lives. I wanted to basically co-parent with her from separate households, and now, we have a great relationship. The kids kind of flow back and forth. They're actually probably with me about 80% of the time because they go to school in Jersey.
Nice.
So they're always here after school and, and all that, but it can work. And I'm proof that it can work.
Okay, so the next question is, did Anna know you when you were addicted to drugs?
She met me. I met Anna at the very tail end of it. And when I met Anna, I had an open charge. I had been arrested again
For
a possession.
Okay.
Which was I think my 5th arrest. I had already did time in jail.
How much time?
2.5 years.
Whoa. Okay.
I was about 18. Had been arrested 3 times, I believe. Possession, intent to distribute, school zone.
What did you have possession of? Heroin?
Crack.
You said a firearm also?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I was 18, or I think I was 18 or 19. Anyway, I got sentenced to 5 years. And with a 2.5 year stipulation, I ended up doing the whole 2.5 years. And I was clean for a while. You know, I had a jailhouse conversion. You know, that's how I reference it. You know,
what is that?
Went to church, accepted Jesus. And almost throughout my whole time, I was committed to that. I got involved in the church. I did a lot of, just a lot of good in the jail. That's where I got my GED at. And then when I got out, I hooked up with a church in Camden.
What church?
Gatekeepers International.
Okay.
And one of the strange things about that is I don't know if you remember where the Wilson Motel and the French Quarter used to be, on Avril Wilson Boulevard.
Uh-huh.
You know, strip club and a hotel.
Uh-huh.
Well, we turned that strip club into the church.
Mm.
The guy gave the pastor of the church the property, all that property, and we actually went in there and remodeled it, and the strip club became the church, which was a pretty cool experience, at the time. I was young, probably 21, 22 years old.
So you meet Anna when you get out of jail?
When did I get out?
No, you meet Anna when you get out of jail.
No. This was years later. So this was several years later. What happened was I ended up leaving the church and I fell back into addiction. I was probably clean at that time, maybe about 5 years.
Mm.
And I don't know. I just wasn't feeling it anymore. I'll tell you, actually, this is what happened. Now that I think about it, the pastor kind of took me under his wing. And I didn't know this at the time. This is all in retrospect when I looked at it. The pastor took me under his wing. And I began to, because I didn't grow up with a dad, I began to look at him as a father figure.
Okay.
And the truth is that I wanted all of his attention. And he's a pastor of a church. Everybody wants his attention.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted all of his attention because I didn't get any growing up. I didn't have a dad there to give me that attention. I didn't have anyone there to give me that attention. And here it was, this pastor, this dynamic guy who I looked up to. And I just felt like I wasn't getting enough of his attention. And I got rebellious just within myself. And I was just,
Did you get rebellious to try to get his attention, or you just got rebellious?
I think it might have started out like that.
Okay.
Because when I left the church for a while, he would try to contact me, and people from the church would try to contact me. It was like a kid move, like you get yourself in, when you're not getting that attention, you get yourself in some trouble, and then you get attention. And it may not be the right way, but you don't know any other way for the adults in your life to take notice of. And when something happens, then they take notice, even if it comes in a negative form, such as punishment or discipline or beating. It's attention. Whereas before you weren't getting anything. So yes, initially I believe I did it to get his attention, but then ultimately I left altogether.
Okay, and then you said you relapsed at this point. You relapsed once you left the church?
Yes.
About how long after you left the church?
Not long at all. It didn't take long at all for my focus to shift from what was once the church and the gospel and Jesus to, as soon as I didn't have that anymore in my life, to heroin jumped up in my head.
Was there so what did you do? You just made a call, or you just went to the block?
I went looking for it.
Oh.
Which was weird because, I had been out of it for now 5 years or so. I didn't even know where to go. I didn't even have street clothes. All my clothes were dress clothes. You know, I couldn't even look like I belonged. You know, like everything was dressed. You know,
They probably thought you was the cops looking at. Like,
it's funny because when I went to go buy it that first time, they asked me, they're like, "Are you a cop?" Yeah. I'm like, "No, I'm no cop." You know, but I've been clean for 5 years. I'm dressed clothes. I'm looking all sharp. You know, but I got addicted that first week, and then from there, it was another 5-year run on heroin.
Really?
Yeah.
Was the church calling? Did you see any of the church members like in the street at that point? Initially,
they were, and then it just kind of, I don't know. I mean, because we didn't have cell phones or anything then, so it wasn't like they were calling me on the cell phone. But initially, I just dropped off, and I was back into the streets full force, selling drugs, supporting my habit that way. Living with my mom in Camden because I didn't have to pay rent or anything. You know, I just kind of lived there. And that was my life again for the next 5 years.
And then what happened? I'm still trying to find when did you meet Anna?
Well, what happened was I got arrested again when I was about 28 years old.
So is this after, so you were...
I relapsed.
5 years you went back to using it.
Yeah.
Now?
And then I get arrested again. Okay. I hadn't been arrested in all that time.
All the 5 years?
I hadn't been arrested. Somehow I avoided getting arrested.
Okay.
So I got arrested. And the first deal on the table was a 3 years, which wasn't a bad deal for the record I had. But at 18, going to jail was cool. I'm from Camden. You go to jail, you get your weight up, you come home, you go back to the block. It's like a party. It's a real twisted cycle. Yeah. It's a real twisted philosophy that you live by in the streets. I think that keeps people going back and forth. That also feeds the attention deficit as well. You know, because you're celebrated when you come home. Sometimes it's by family, sometimes it's by, your homies in the street. Like it feeds that attention deficit that maybe you lacked in the home. I'm not saying that's across the board for everyone, but I've witnessed it and I've seen it, and I've seen it enough times to know that it's a bad philosophy to live by. But anyhow, at 28, it seemed pathetic to me. So whereas 18, it seemed cool, and I was scared. I wasn't like running to the jail. I was scared to go. I told you I didn't have whatever it takes to be that person in the streets. I didn't have it.
They said that about Tupac. Actually, it's funny you're saying the same thing. They said Tupac, he was trying to sell drugs early on. And he was so terrible. Like, people was taking his money.
Yeah.
He was he wasn't a street guy. So the street guys would just pay him to do like writing and doing his rap thing.
Okay.
It was like he was terrible on the street.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't have it. And if not for my addiction fed the need to stay out there, to be on a corner, selling drugs, dealing with getting robbed, that whole lifestyle. Okay, I'm scared most of the time.
So at 28, you get sentenced again. Is that correct?
Well, that's the first deal. My uncle's my lawyer. He's working he's trying to get another deal.
Your uncle? He's
not
the
same
lawyer?
Uncle. I have another uncle who's a lawyer.
You just reminded me of My Cousin Vinny, one of my favorite movies ever. It's like, his uncle.
It's sort of like that. You'll be in court and you'll get called up, and he won't be there.
But
it's this ongoing joke about the Fontanezes. They aren't on time, not even for court. So in between court sessions, I'll just throw this little detail in to just show you where I was at. In between court hearings, I'm running to South Camden to get high. I'm leaving the courthouse. I'm going down to 4th and Royden in South Camden. I'm copping dope, and then I'm going back to the courthouse. Sometimes taking it in there with me, going in the bathroom. And me and my uncle were going down the steps after one court session, and he was like, "Look, if you're not going to stop, you might as well go to jail." And I'm like, no, I can't go to jail. I'm 28 years old. if I was weak at 18, at 28, I'm definitely weak. I can't do that. It was around this time that I met Anna.
How'd you meet her? Where?
I met her on a job. I was a floor layer then.
Okay.
She was cleaning the buildings at night, and I met her on the elevator. And shortly thereafter, we started, talking, and then, this relationship formed. But in the midst of that, I still had that deal on the table of a 3 flat, and I was telling her, look, I might, I told her, I was like, I might be going to jail. And I really don't know how she took it. She was like, oh, like she seemed to be indifferent about it. Now that I have daughters, I'm thinking, you better run, like you better turn around and run, because nothing good is coming out of that. But I got a new deal, and I got house arrest and for a year and 3 years probation.
Instead of the 3 years.
Instead of the 3 years in jail.
All right, my cousin Vinny did a good job. That's a good
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
So now, what is house? What's house arrest?
That's where you wear the monitor on your ankle.
Okay, but what is the other? I know about the ankle deal, but what is what's the restrictions about house arrest?
I could go. I had to give them my times for work. So what time I left in the morning, what time I was coming back home. So they already had that program so that when I went out, the thing didn't go off. Other than that, I wasn't allowed to go any place without prior permission. So if I wanted to get a haircut, I would have to contact my house arrest officer and say, hey, I want to get a haircut such and such time, and it's probably going to be about this long. And then I guess they would put it in the system so that it wouldn't go off the monitoring thing. Or go food shopping or whatever you had to do, you had to get permission prior. There was no just getting up and going.
And how tight was the time constriction? So like in your example, you just said you have to go get a haircut. You said they need to know how long it's going to be. Let's say you need to get a haircut and you tell them it's going to be 2 hours. But let's say that something crazy happens and it takes 2 hours and 10 minutes.
I never had that actually happen, so I don't know. I had a pretty cool officer, and once I was dealing with her for about a year, so into it, we got a little more comfortable. I wasn't trying to like gank the system or anything. I was working. I was clean, so I was working, and just doing what I had to do.
You still with Anna at this point while you're on house arrest?
I'm with Anna, yes. Anna moves in with me, actually, while I'm on house arrest.
Where were you living?
I was living in Collingswood.
Okay, so Anna's living with you now?
So now she's living with me. I'm on house arrest. We're working, and she's pregnant with my oldest daughter.
Okay.
And so what happened was, I got this new deal. She moved in with me, and I'm just in the beginning of being clean. I'm like 4 months clean. And I'm not driving. I'm taking the bus down to the transportation center in Camden and then catching the bus, or taking the train and then catching the bus up to Gloucester to where my job was at. I was a floor layer. But what was happening was I was hanging at the transportation center too much in between, letting a bus go by, hanging out, talking to old people, and I end up using. I go with somebody, it just gets the best of me, and I go and I get high. And that's a Friday, and I come home, and she can tell. She can tell that I'm high, and I deny it. I deny it all weekend. No. And then I come clean on, I think Sunday. Or maybe Monday after work, I come clean. She already knew, but I come clean, and I tell her. And she tells me if I ever use again, she's going to leave. And she's pregnant with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And this is October of, I've been clean for 15 years now. So it's 15 years ago.
Nice.
My daughters have never seen my addiction.
So was that the last time that time?
That was the last time. That was the last time I ever used. So it's been, October made 15 years. I've been clean and sober. No alcohol, no drugs, no cigarettes. I used to smoke as well. Nothing.
How much cigarettes did you smoke?
Probably about a pack a day, pack and a half a day.
A pack and a half a day, really?
Yeah.
Wow. How long have you been tobacco free or smoke free?
Same time. I quit everything at once.
How did you do it? You just did. You just did cold turkey, or did you go?
Yeah, I just did it. You know, I think in the beginning I kind of weaned myself off. I wasn't using that much, so I didn't go through a horrible withdrawal from the heroin. Although I had been through some horrible ones, but at that stage I was just kind of, you know, getting high here and there at the very end. So I didn't have to go through any terrible withdrawal. And then, like I said, I was clean for that 4 months, and I used that one time. And luckily, just by chance, it didn't start the fire again. And it might have had something to do with Anna just threatening to leave. She was pregnant with my daughter. It was just that combination of things at that time. And I decided that, I just decided I didn't want to use anymore.
All right, that's awesome. And as we're winding down, I do want to ask you, I'm pretty sure somebody's wondering the same thing. Have you ever went back to that church or seen anyone from that church?
I have run into a few people here and there. And, you know, said hi, how you doing? And you know, good to see you. And that was about the extent of it, yeah. Okay, you kept it moving. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess, let's see. What can we... Listen, ladies and gentlemen, again, this is John Fontanez. This is the first of 8 episodes that we're doing exclusively together. And for those of you that were listening earlier, he will be going on to create his own podcast. And when you create your own podcast, John, tell them what it is. What's the vision for the podcast?
The vision is to constantly, you know, share my story and talk about fatherhood, the challenges of being a divorced father, and also to inspire that your past doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a bad father. Now, because had I went to court, like if we would have ended up in court and Anna would have been still angry. I'm just speculating. And she says, you know, I was an addict and alcoholic, and throughout our marriage, I suffered from depression, and I wasn't really there as a father. And the truth is, I'm a better father now. That's the truth, because I wasn't a great father while I was married. I was in my own crap. Anyway, lay all that out. I don't look like I'm going to be a good father. So what happens? I'm put on a court stipulated visiting thing, see how I do, a trial run to see if I can be a dad, you know? But really, I'm a better father now. And I think the divorce and having the kids on my own was the catalyst for that. It put me in that position to be a better dad. And that's what I became.
I know you have a great love and joy for your kids. But when you just was talking about when you kicked a habit for good that time, 15 years ago, that was when your daughter was also, not born yet. But your girlfriend at the time, Anna, was pregnant.
Yes.
Do you think you would have kicked the habit at that same point as easily as you did if it was just you and Anna together and there was no baby involved?
I don't know, because when I think about when I stopped initially before I used again in that 4 month time, initially it was a culmination of things. I had met Anna and I was headed back to jail. It was those two things that were in combination that kind of started me along the road of like, I need to stop using. I didn't want to go back to jail at 28, and then I had met Anna. And then she got pregnant shortly thereafter, obviously, because 4 months into it, I said she was pregnant and I used. But it was a culmination of initially meeting Anna and having a deal on the table where I was going back to jail. Okay, last 2 questions.
Yes. One is, what makes a great father a great father?
To me, it's time. It's all about the time you spend with your kids. Time to me is of the utmost importance. It doesn't have to be anything big. You know, tickle on your kid on the couch. It's time. I don't work overtime. because that takes time away from my kid. And as a carpenter, everybody works. As a carpenter, you work overtime. You got side jobs. You're bringing money in. To me, that takes away from my kids. So that's it. And that's where this comes from, because when you're on that's where this desire to talk about this comes from, because when you're on those visitation restrictions, your time is limited. And, so time is big for me.
Okay. Here's the last question, John.
Okay.
Last one. There's a 99.9999% chance that someone that's listening to this is a bad father. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
We're going to be back 2 weeks from now. And I know how it is. I always think of podcasts like there's, when the news, in the morning they say, oh, there's a terrible thing that just happened. And then it cuts to the next scene and it says, we'll be back at 6:00 this evening. And then you got to wait all day, right? You got to wait all day to get that very important information, that life-changing information they told you about in the morning. There's a bad father out there that's a bad father right now. And he's going to follow these next 7 episodes we do after this. They're going to follow you on your podcast when you create, and they're going to listen to you once every 2 weeks or once a month, however often you create an episode. But in this moment right here, what is some simple, basic advice, one or many, that a bad father that's listening to this right now can do to become a great father? Or a better father?
For me, it's dialogue with your children. I didn't want to be a father that ruled over my children. I wanted to be a father that was open to have dialogue. If my kids do something wrong, and I'm not saying I don't blow up sometimes. I'm not saying that. I'm not the perfect father. I'm just a better father. I want to talk it out. I got yelled at growing up. No one talked. I got yelled at and I got beat. They were the two things: yelled at, beat, sometimes in combination. I talk to my kids. I try to get them to open up. Tell me what's going on. Let's talk about it. Let's get through it. And when I mess up, I talk to them about it. When I blow up, I go back to them and I say, look, I acted horribly. And my daughters will always say, no, it's okay, Daddy. And I say, no, it's not okay. So dialogue with your kids, talking to your kids. That goes a long, long way. Some people say you're not supposed to be friends with your kids. You're supposed to be the parent. And that's a philosophy too, and that works for some people. I'm not saying I want to be best friends with my kids, but I want my kids, when something happens in their own lives, they can come and talk to me, because we've already had this dialogue as they were growing up. They know that I'm here to talk, and they know that I admit when I'm wrong. When I mess up, I admit it. I don't think it makes me weak as a parent. I think it makes me stronger as a parent, because I go to them and say, I did wrong there. I could have done this.
Man, this is so good. It's so funny because the quote that you just said, I think you need to, whoever didn't write that down, they need to. I have a great memory. But you said, you're not the perfect father, but you're a better father. Not a perfect father, you're a better father. And I think that so many fathers could be better fathers if they understood and they were okay with not being a perfect father. That was my take home. That was my tweetable moment. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another Billionaire Brown Experience. We are here with John Fontanez on that side, and I'm Billionaire Brown on this side. I'm still fired up, and I'm still ready to go. Till next time, continue to be.
Thank you very much.
Bad credit affects where you live, what you drive, and even your current or next job. With so many frustrating issues that happen in life, we can help you find relief. Text 480-358-7725 today. Not only will we fix your credit, but we will educate you so you can educate your family. Now back to your favorite podcast.